Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we are heading to Spooky Town to talk about Duskmourn, our favorite cards from the main set for the new standard set, Duskmourn. We have a lot of really neat and some creepy cards, not all creepy, but a lot of really cool cards that we're going to be talking about today. Join with me today is Preston. Preston, how's it going, man?
Going pretty good. When we were first starting off this set previews, I wasn't sure how much I was gonna like it, but now that we've gotten the full set, I've come around to it. I think I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, that's what's up. And we also have Jason. How's it going, man?
Going good. I don't know what's gotten more of my attention the past couple of days, but football or Magic. But man, this set is really, really spicy, and I'm glad football's back.
Uh, you sports ball guys, I'm so happy for you. And hi, I am your host Morgan. I'm also doing really good. Went to a really cool concert last night, and then just got back from a movie with my wife. I'm living a great life, guys. If you want to support the show in any way, you can do all the YouTube algorithm stuff. That being liking the video, sharing it with a friend, checking out old videos you haven't seen yet. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't know what I did or didn't say. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can head over to patreon.com/geekandseek YouTube. And you can also find a link to that in the description, as well as a link to hop in our Discord if you would like to keep the conversation going. Favorite comment from last week is from Goodwild5299. This is from the Mana Rocks tier list that we did a few episodes ago. I like you kids. Entertaining to see the back and forth, even though I disagree with some of your takes. And that's what we're here for. We are here to voice different opinions. As you know, the three of us, we don't agree on everything, and that's what makes for interesting discussions.
We just like to start conversations and see where it goes. And if you become a part of that conversation, all the better.
I like you kids. Like I like how it's not condescending's not the right way to put it, but it's like an endearing term. It's like like an endearing thing. Like, oh, so naive.
And it's
You
like you can't even
kids.
really get upset about that because like
Yeah.
think about what we're talking about.
We're
It
talking
is a card
about
game
a card game made for
that
kids. Yeah.
we all spend too much money on.
Yeah, that's for sure. Couple quick news things. What do you guys? I don't know if Jason or Preston saw this, but the new I don't know if it's the newest video anymore by the time this is going up, but I made a quick news video talking about the Magic the Gathering show getting canceled, and that video did astronomically well compared to our last several videos. So what do you guys think about us doing more news oriented stuff? And then do you, as the viewers of this show, would you guys care to see that? Because it took me like 20 minutes to film it and like 10 minutes to edit it. And I could easily do more of that content if you guys wanted me to do more of it. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think there's room for that in the Magic YouTube scene? Do you think the viewers care to see more of that? Why did that video do well? I don't know.
It probably depends on the news. Like people have been really hopeful towards that Netflix show coming out, and as time has went on, the fact that it wasn't coming out was starting to really make some people upset. And now it's canceled, so a lot of people were looking for videos to talk about it, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point. Also, people are much more interested in relevant stuff, and what happened yesterday isn't as relevant as what happened today. So I kind of get that the way that society works in that instant. Got to have the new news now. I get it. So I that's but why did it get canceled exactly? I didn't watch the video.
Oh, you fool! I mean, there's that. Really, it's because Netflix was trying to cut cost. Was the bottom line was that Netflix? Well, I kind of went on a rant about Netflix because they're a terrible business. But they were trying to cut costs is the main thing. But it's more than just that. But yeah, definitely a disappointment. But there is something.
Honestly,
Go ahead, Preston.
I'm I was gonna say I'm glad it just got canceled outright than doing the typical Netflix thing of getting one or two seasons, being super popular, everyone's loving it, and then it still get canceled for some reason. So at
Yeah.
least we avoided that.
Yeah. Or a lot of the comments made it sound like, well, what if it just is bad? Like, what if they just make a bad show? Then yeah, that could have happened too. But I don't think it was likely because it had a good writing team. Like the writing team was really good for it, so I don't think it would have been bad.
So like, but like, even if it was bad, like honestly, so what? At least you tried. And
Right.
here's the
Yeah.
thing, even doing it wrong, that's gonna show someone maybe a better way so that it can be done right. So I mean, I don't know.
Failure the best teacher is, as Master Yoda said. Uh, and then as I said, this episode we are only talking about cards from the main set. If you guys specifically want stuff from the Commander precons, the new cards from that, we will be doing next week's episode about that. So tune in for that. And then the last piece of news is that we are not doing an upkeep episode, our Commander gameplay series for Duskmourn. And it's likely that we won't be doing gameplay anymore or very often for the new sets going forward. Probably just go back to more evergreen stuff like what we used to do because for a long time, Wizards was sending us stuff, and that made it a lot easier to get our decks built ahead of time, get it filmed and edited and released like really quick. So it was coming out like right as the set was coming out. And that would like guarantee that it would get the views and stuff. And now it's much harder for that to happen. But both with my schedule, with how fast we can get the cards, quick we can get together and film, it's just not very realistic anymore. So I want to float this to you guys here because you guys would be a part of this, but I also want to know what the viewers would think in the comments. But the way around this that I see is that Preston and I have talked about for a couple years now that we should have a Magic Online series. We could probably buy decks, film the episode, edit it, and release it on the same day if we had a Magic Online series. But the problem is Magic Online is ugly as hell. So even though we could do the set specific episodes and we could like quickly and cheaply build decks, I don't know if people would even care to watch. So what do you guys think? Jewel
That's
has
a Jewel.
opinions.
A
Yeah.
Jewel has opinions. Um, I would do it. I would do it if people would watch it.
So let us know in the
Yeah,
comments.
I've been wanting to do Magic Online for a long time, so if people are at all interested, I'm down.
Heck yeah. And that'd be a really easy way to get guests on the show too. We've had many a people ask if we're going to have guests on the show. No, we live in the middle of nowhere. There are no other content creators around us. Doing a Magic Online series would be a pretty easy way to make that happen. All right. Let's hop into the list. So we are going to do a top 10 list, sort of. We're going to have a card that we all like, and then we're going to have our individual top threes. But we felt like it was worth talking about very quickly two cycles of cards that are in this set. They're both two new land cycles. We have a new common land cycle. That's all 10 of the possible two-color combinations at the common rarity. And then also the start of a new rare dual land cycle. So let's start with the common ones. I don't know if we have a name for these yet, but they're all lands that enter the battlefield tapped unless a player has 13 or less life, and then they tap for one of the two colors. What do you guys think about these lands?
So in standard, they're a lot easier to enter untapped, but I think in commander, they're gonna be slightly less valuable. I really wish that they had land types that way you could at least like tutor for them. Um,
I think if they had the types, they would just for sure be the best common dual lands. I think if they were fetchable, they would just for sure be the best common dual lands.
right, right. And you know, people having 13 or less life when you want this land to enter untapped, it's just not going to happen as often as you'd like it to. Unless you're running a specific deck where, you know, it's really aggro and you're dealing a lot of damage to people. Like if you're in a Boros freaking, you know, 1/1 creatures and, you know, you run like Goblin Bombardment, you know, and you're able to just deal damage to people like that, and people's life totals are just getting lowered that way. Or if you have an Orzhov Life Drain deck, um, then these cards are going to be a little bit better, but I think overall, they're much better in standard than they are in commander, which I think is pretty good. It's good for it's good for the game. You can't just design every card with, well, how's this going to be play with commander players? Because I don't think that that's fair to the other formats.
I think if these stay reasonably priced, they're not bad as like budget commander options, but yeah, they're definitely made for the other formats.
Well, yeah, so keep in mind that common dual lands exist for the sake of limited, for the sake of draft and sealed. Um, but yeah, they would be budget options for standard or whatnot. But keep in mind that they are any player has 13 or less life. So you could get to the late game and just someone else is low, even if it's not you, or even if the other people are pretty healthy. If just someone's low, then by the late game, these are coming in untapped. The Orzhov one, specifically Neglected Manor, that might have to go in my life swap deck because I get my life low on purpose, and I've been itching to put more dual lands in that deck. But the fact that these are common dual lands that are probably going to cap out at like at worst, you could probably get less than $1 still. I think if you're on a budget and you just need duels, none of the other common duels come in untapped. So that's got to be something. The fact that these will come in untapped sometimes.
I feel like these might end up having a price tag if they get popper play.
Ooh, that's a good point.
That might push them out of actual budget decks. If that doesn't happen, they'll probably be cheap, but I feel like there's a good chance it will with at least a few of them.
And I don't plan on putting any of these into a deck that I have, but one deck that I have that I could see it going in and actually being okay is my Miracle deck, because one of the things that I'm okay with in that deck is having my life total less than 20, because then Miracle is indestructible. So if I have my life total at 13, that's not the worst, probably. The deck is designed to stabilize when you're in that situation. Um, and so, I could see it in that deck, but I don't plan on putting it into any deck just because I don't really think that these are great for Commander as a budget option. And I absolutely agree that they are the best common dual land because there are situations where they'll enter untapped and the other ones just don't have
Well,
that.
there are fetchable ones, so that's worth
The
noting.
fetchable
If you
ones,
care about the fetchability, there are ones that are technically maybe better just because you could fetch them, but
no, I think this next cycle of lands is much better.
yes, this next.
I
Go ahead, Preston.
One more thing, I do think we should call these Friday lands. I think that's what the name for them should be.
Friday lands because
Friday the
13 life.
13th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I
We're
like
recording
that.
this episode
that's
on
what they're
Friday the
referencing.
13th.
It's
about
fate.
that?
It has to be a thing now. We have to start that.
Next up is the Verge land. So these are pretty interesting. We have 5 of them, and they always come in untapped. They tap for 1 mana, 1 color of mana right away, and then if you have specific types of lands, they can also tap for another color. So, for example, we have Blazemire Verge, which comes in untapped, can tap for a black right away. And if you control a swamp or a mountain, it can also tap for a red. So, these are kind of interesting because they're similar to the check lands, right? Like they're similar to that in that they those enter untapped as long as you control one of those lands. But these are always going to enter untapped, which is really interesting. What I think the weirdest part about these is that normally with our dual land cycles, they cap out at 10, but these you could have 20 of them because you could have like, for example, like we have Blazemire Verge, but we could also have another Rakdos one that comes in, automatically taps for red, and then later taps for a black. So you could do it the other way around. So you could actually have 20 different versions of these lands. What do you guys think?
These are an
I think
automatic
these are
auto include.
includes and 2 color. And in 3 color, if you are primarily focused on 1 color, I think you run them if it taps for that main color. I think that's where you're going to get these to be most useful. Once you get to 4 and 5, that's a little risky. Maybe the green ones.
I think in a 5 color deck you can find spots for certain ones, especially if you're trying to make sure that you have one of a specific, like one of two specific colors. Like every hand that you draw, like if you're trying to, make sure that your color fixing and your deck build is right. Um, but even in 4 color decks, I think that these cards are all stars. I really do.
Ah,
I
I mean,
really
if
do.
you're running like fetch Triome, like if you have a fetch land and you grab a Triome and then you play one of these, then yeah, sure. But like, not everyone's doing that with their mana bases, So,
Well, hear me out. Hear me out.
and then you have better
So,
options for duels, don't you? Once you get to four or
so
five color.
well, in 5 color, I agree with you more, but in 4 color, think about it this way. All you need to do is have at least like one of the colors that has the specific land type, which is 50% of your colors. If you're a 4 color deck, half of your colors tap for a black and could be a swamp, or tap for a red and could be a mountain. So, because it checks for both of those, and it's going to enter untapped and give you at least one of your 4 colors, I think that this is an auto include into 4 color decks as well. You don't include a ton of them, but I still think that these are going to have a lot of value in those decks. 3 color decks, they're auto includes. 2 color decks, they are obviously auto includes. But I would also put these in every 4 color deck that I have.
Interesting. So, I will be a lot happier to experiment with these when we have all of them. We can assume that at some point in history they will complete this cycle, and so the problem isn't just that we only have half of a cycle per se. The problem is we also need the flip
Yeah, so
of
we
the
really have
already
a
existing ones, because
we really
I
have a
was
quarter.
We have a fourth.
yeah. The problem is I was so what I'm about to say is mostly going to apply to 60 card formats, because I've been spending the last week trying to decide if these lands are good or not. So what I'm about to say mostly applies to 60 card formats, but it also kind of applies to Commander. You have to decide which of your colors you need more in the early game, because not all of your lands have the types. You're going to have utility lands, you're going to have some other duels that don't have the types and stuff like that. So, yeah, by the mid to late game, sure, these are for, they'll tap for both colors, but early game, you're only guaranteed the first one, right? And then after that, you're not sure. You don't know when you're going to turn the second color on. So, you're really incentivized to kind of look at the curve of your deck and say, like, turn 1, turn 2, which of these colors do I need more? And then whatever the land comes in. So, like, for example, Thornspire Verge, the Gruul one. If I'm my early turns, I want the red cards, then sure, this is probably pretty good there. But if your early turns in that deck are Lion War Elves and stuff, and you'd rather have the green, it would be better if we had the inverse of this, So I do think that these are perfectly playable, especially in 2-color decks. I think these are perfectly playable, but I would be much happier to experiment with them if we had all 20 of them.
Alls I'm saying,
That's fair.
It depends
all,
on how much you care about your early turns.
alls I'm saying is even though you get one guaranteed mana in the early game, you know what that one mana can still do?
Don't say
It
it.
can turn one a Soul Ring.
You know what else can do that, Jason? My basic waste.
The last thing that I want to say about these is I genuinely believe this with all my heart. Pick up as many of these as you can now, because there's only like the certain amount of them at this point. They're probably going to be more expensive dual lands than you think. So,
Well, and now that we just had so Paper Standards gained popular again, and we just had rotation, so the mana bases are kind of scuffed. So especially for the color combinations that want these, they're gonna go up in price. So
yes. So
if you
if that's
open
also
them,
the case,
yeah,
if that's also the case, then maybe just wait until, they rotate out of standard, I
in
guess.
3 years. So,
But no, yeah, like pick up as many of these as you can if they're cheap, because they're only going to get higher in price.
yeah. All right, so heading into the official top 10, here's a card that we were all pretty excited about. This is Enduring Innocence. There's a cycle of new cards that are enchantment creatures that they have an effect, and then that they are creatures, and then when they die, they come back as just an enchantment and aren't creatures anymore. So this is the white one. For one white, so 3 mana. It's a 2/1 Sheep Glimmer with lifelink. Did I say it's Enduring Innocence? Did I say the name of the card? It's Enduring Innocence. And whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enters, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, and then when it dies, if it was a creature, you return it to the battlefield under its control. Under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. It's not a creature anymore. So this is like Power Corrupt Welcoming Vampire, which is kind of a white staple. If you're playing a bunch of small creatures low to the ground, or you're playing some kind of token deck, this is pretty dang good. Going to draw you a bunch of cards. Even better if you're playing like those cards that like pump out tokens every upkeep, like Illustrious Wanderglyph, or there's a couple that make Saprolings. You know, if you're playing those kind of things, then you can trigger this every turn. Or if you have flash creatures, and it's a cute guy. It's just a cute guy. He's got lifelink, which makes it even better in life gain decks. So, and a lot of in your life gain decks, a lot of your like soul wardens and stuff are going to trigger this because they're small creatures. So it just seems really good. If you're playing a deck that is either tokens or small creatures, it seems really good. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so this whole cycle I really like. The fact that, me and you were talking about this before we started the episode, but these are creatures, which a lot of the times these sort of effects with your creature decks are on enchantments or something. So like you're like, do I want to run this enough to justify not having that creature slot? But this one gets you that effect and is a creature itself, so it works with the rest of the deck really well. So that's really nice. 3 mana is a pretty good cost for this effect, especially since this one doesn't make you pay any. Some of these other effects make you have to pay mana on top
So
of.
so the most direct comparison is Welcoming Vampire, which is from it's from Crimson Vow. And it's basically the same thing. But it doesn't come back. If you board wipe with a Welcoming Vampire, it's just gone. You board wipe with this in play, the effect comes back as an enchantment. So the Welcoming Vampire is the closest, because that's also 3 mana. It has flying.
It comes back, and it comes back. It comes back harder to get rid of because then it's just an enchantment.
Yeah, and I talked about how the Friday lands, I probably wouldn't put any of those in Miracle. I probably would put this one, the black one, and the green one in Miracle because that's literally what Miracle does. And the nice thing about these is I don't have to exile them from my graveyard when they die. There's some interesting stuff that you could do to like repeat it. Um, it's just these cards are really cool, and I like that white gets this type of card draw ability. Remember the days of Mentor of the Meek when you had to pay mana when this happened to draw a card?
Yeah, it was rough, man.
Oh man, this is terrible.
Also, if you can turn these back into creatures with another effect, they're just unkillable
Or if you
while
just
that
like
effect's around.
bounce it to your hand and play it again as a creature, or
2
if
iron white,
or
which is doable.
or if you destroy it as an enchantment, it goes to your graveyard. You return it to the battlefield as a creature. There's plenty of
Sun
stuff that you
Titan.
can do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's 3 or less. You can grab
And
the Sun Titan.
you can grab it with Sun Titan. I also like that it's going
That's
to
gross.
trigger. I also like that it's going to trigger both creature ETB effects and enchantment ETB effects. I like that.
So we really like it. So we are going to head into our proper top 3s now. Preston, why don't you lead us through your first card?
All right, so my first card is Niko, Light of Hope. It's 2, a white and a blue for a legendary creature human wizard, 3/4. When Niko enters, you create 2 shard tokens, which are enchantments with 2 generic. Sacrifice an enchantment, scry 1, then draw a card. And then if you pay 2 and tap him, you exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the end step. Now, I don't know if this is a viable commander right now, but I feel like there might just be enough here to make it work, and it was very interesting to me if you could make something out of this. Because you want to have a balance of ETB effects on your creatures, but also creatures that like do something else while they're out there. So like, this isn't the right color, but like an Avenger of Zendikar, that's a non-legendary creature with an ETB and something that benefits you while it's on the battlefield. So if you can find some good cards like that in white and blue, this kind of appeals to me as a potential commander option.
Something else you could do with this is you could put a lot of untap effects in your deck, and then really get tricky with how you make Niko copies of stuff. Because, it doesn't say that you have to do this at sorcery speed, so you can do this at instant speed. So if you make it a copy of something on your turn to gain value and then untap it, if you have the mana available, you can save it and then tap it when you need to make it a copy of something else. I do like cards that have like the ability to be tricky. So if you do stuff like that with it, I think that this could be a really, really fun commander deck to play.
I was just trying to think of all the fair ways you could do this because like there are artifacts and stuff that let you untap stuff. White has cards like Drum Bellower, I think is what it's called.
Blue, blue
Blue,
has untapped
and then
stuff.
I was like, blue has intruder alarms, uh, which is a
And
perfectly fair card.
even if you
Uh,
don't go that way, which you could absolutely go that way, and oh my God, um, but you could like play cards like Retreat to Coral Helm, and that's playing it fairly because now you're just playing one land a turn. So
it is funny that it reads like because of the exile return to the battlefield, it reads like it's a flicker commander, but because the shards are already there, they don't get enter the battlefield effects. So you want it to be creatures that have like attack triggers or because the shards have a sacrifice clause. You could play cards that have sacrifice effects or die effects, which might be kind of interesting. Because since you're in you'll run out of your shards really fast by doing that, but you are in white and blue, which means you can flicker Niko itself to get more shards. You're also in white, which means you have token doublers. So there are interesting things you can do with it, but my brain is about to go kaput trying to put it all together. But I feel like there's definitely cool things you can do with it.
yeah, this is a really cool card.
Jason, what's your first card?
All right, so my first card is a card that I think should go into every commander deck that has black in it. And you should never play Murder again because of this card. But it's come back wrong. So, for 2 a black, it's a sorcery that says destroy target creature. If a creature is put into a graveyard this way, return it to the battlefield under your control. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. So, here's the way this card works in Commander. If you destroy an opponent's commander, you get to bring it back to the battlefield under your control, because you have to let the entire effect of the card resolve before another player can take priority to move their commander into the command zone. So by the time this card is done resolving, the commander no longer is able to be put into the command zone because it isn't changing zones. It's already changed zones and is now on the battlefield under your control. So this is a guaranteed way to steal someone's commander after destroying it, unless somebody has a counterspell. This card is so good. And you get to sacrifice their commander, so it goes to the graveyard anyways. And you have to do that at the beginning of your next end step, which is one thing. But if you're able to cast this at instant speed with cards like Vedalken Orrery or something like that, that's pretty spicy. But this to me is definitely like a main phase 1, destroy somebody's commander, steal it, attack them with it, and then sacrifice it at the end step,
For
dude.
psychic
I
damage.
I love this card. This card goes into every black deck in Commander.
I was
It
thinking,
doesn't give the creature haste though,
yeah.
No, but
but
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You like their commander has to be on the battlefield, but honestly, like how often are you really just gonna like destroy somebody's commander on your next turn as soon as they cast it, unless it's one of those kill on sight commanders? And even if it is one of those kill on sight commanders, just having it on your board for a turn is probably going to be a lot, unless it's specifically trying to attack. But a lot of the kill on sight commanders, they either like have ETB effects or they have like certain abilities that you can activate. So even then, this card is still going to do so much work for you.
Well, so because it's 3 mana creature removal and black just has better options for creature removal, um, I feel
But it's
like
not just creature
you're wanting
removal.
it. Well, yeah,
It's
but I feel like you would normally. I originally read it as just the value play, like someone has a creature with a cool enter the battlefield effect, or there's some kind of sweet value, and you play for the value. And then I'm like, okay, if I have to pay this at sorcery speed instead of instant speed, and I have to spend 3 mana, I could see this still having some really cool effects. But the fact that it does work that way with commanders does make it more interesting, because if you're someone like Preston, and Preston builds his decks in ways that half the time they don't work if you don't have your commander in play, you just knocked Preston out of the game. So
That's rude. Don't even say
well,
that.
no, because you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So when it goes to the graveyard, then they'll have the ability to put it back into the command zone because it's changing
yeah, that's true.
zones. It's their commander, they still own
Yeah,
it. Here's the tricky part. If you didn't think this card was tricky enough, the text on this card says sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. So if you just, I don't know, skip your end step,
Sundial of the Infinite or whatever the hell it's called.
they don't get to do nothing. You don't have to give them their commander back. So,
The
Or
kind
just
of
some
cards
flicker
that would
effects.
the kind of
or just a
cards that
flicker
would
effect.
the kind of cards that decks that would play Sundial are the kind of decks where I would consider playing this anyways. So Jason likes to come up with these far-fetched situations for commander games, but like that actually checks out. That actually seems like something that could happen, is this plus Sundial. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, I dig it. I feel like most of the time it's even decent if you're just playing it for value. Like, I'm going to kill that creature that gave you a lot of value so I can get some value. Like, that seems decent by itself, but
Yeah, I would do this to
yeah.
somebody's dock side in a heartbeat.
Yeah. All right. First card on my list is Razorkin Needlehead. This is a human assassins 2/2 for red and a red. It has first strike during your turn, and whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So, we talked a couple episodes ago about soft stacks and how we felt like it was necessary in Commander to have cards that hated on greedy players going burr and drawing half their deck in 1 turn. But unfortunately, the conclusion was that the best options we had right now were too good, that being Orcish Bowmasters and Shieldred the Apocalypse. We felt like that while it was probably good that those cards existed, they were probably a little stronger than we wanted them to be. Razorkin Needlehead, I think, is the sweet spot.
Oh yeah.
It's much worse than Orcish Bowmaster, because Orcish Bowmaster, you can deal the 1 damage to anything, not just the player. And you're also making a giant orc army while you're doing it. Whereas this only deals damage to the player's face. It doesn't hit their creatures. And it's not giving you a whole extra body. But also because it's red, and those other downsides, it does feel more niche. It's not like Orcish Bowmasters or Shieldred where you could run them in every black deck and it feels good. This just feels like it goes in some red decks. But I think it goes in a lot of red decks. It goes in burn decks. It goes in wheel decks. It goes in control decks. It goes in human decks, assassin decks. If you're just playing a small creature value aggro deck, it does have first strike on your turn, so it's a good attacker. So
if you just hate blue,
yeah. I mean,
it goes in that deck.
So it does seem a lot more narrow than Orcish Bowmasters or Shieldred, but it has enough homes that I feel like a lot of red decks will want it, if that makes sense. So I actually really like this. It feels more fair, while also still serving the purpose that we want it to fulfill.
It's such a solid and efficient 2/2 for 2. I just and the one thing that like you could have given this thing haste and it probably still would have been like fine.
Ah,
The one thing you can't give this
come down,
card.
guys. These guys got to be standard legal too.
Well,
Be a little too good.
I guess that probably would be too good for standard. Definitely how giving it flash would be too good for standard. Oh my God. Flash would be really good in commander though. But this is great. I love efficient 2/2s for 2 that are gonna actually make an impact. That one damage is gonna is gonna do a lot over time. You're just gonna ping, 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 and it's
Make the green player think twice about their risk guard's expertise. Like they'll probably still do it, but it'll hurt.
incidental draws per turn, any card draw.
Yeah, it does. It does. Some of these effects don't count the first card you draw at the during your draw phase. This will still deal that. So there are also commanders that specifically care about dealing increments of 1 damage. This checks that every single turn. So like the face commander of the Rakdos deck that we'll talk about next week, that works there, or the Ob Nixilis from March of the Machine, the Aftermath. There are cards that specifically care about dealing 1 damage at a time. This is a way to repeatably do that. That's
Or
it.
any decks that care about like if an opponent lost life this turn. This fits right into those decks.
It's good in burn decks because you have like the damage multipliers too, like Torbrand or Oger, the red god from Ixalan. Yeah.
Gonna find a lot of homes.
Yeah, I was gonna say this by itself is more fair than those other cards, but you are playing the wheel color and the color that doubles and triples, and like I think there might be even like a quadruples your damage effects, and the cares about doing 1 damage. So
At least that takes some setup.
this card is still pretty close.
Oh yeah. I think it's good, but that requires more setup than Orcish Bowmasters. And this isn't knocking out your creatures. The big offense of like Orcish Bowmasters is that you cast it and then you also get to kill someone's mana dork. That just what the hell? This isn't gonna do that.
Eventually, we're
And
gonna
it
get
builds up a creature next to it.
eventually we're gonna get a red enchantment that says octuple each 1 damage you do or something like that.
Game ends on turn 4. Hell yeah. We go. Preston, walk us through your next card.
All right. So my next card is for some reason still only in Japanese on Scryfall, but it's Marina Vendrell. For 1 of each color, it's a 3/5 legendary creature human warlock. When she enters, you reveal the top 7 cards of your library. You put all enchantment cards from among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then you can tap her to lock or unlock a door of a target room you control, activate only as a sorcery. So this is clearly trying to be a room commander, but with that first effect, you can do anything you want in regarding to enchantments, really. Like I was thinking this could be a fun commander to build the Theros gods around. You could do sagas. This is a saga option. Like anything revolving enchantments is possible with this commander, which I think is going to make it pretty popular.
This is that one mom who never really had any like boundaries or anything and just like would open your door without knocking. Like, what are you doing? You behaving in here?
You
No?
know what I hate?
You guys suck. You guys are supposed to laugh at that.
I laughed on the inside. You know what I hate, Preston? You know what I hate? There's a new card in the set that I barely didn't make my list. It was like number 4 on my list. It's Marina Vendrell's Grimoire. And I'm probably going to make a video about it because it combos with Quasar, and I love cards that combo with Quasar because it's hilarious, and I sometimes accidentally kill myself. But if I don't, I'll kill my opponent, and that's cool. So I will probably make a video about that card. But the problem is, it's a legendary artifact. So the Marina Vendrell's Grimoire doesn't work in this deck, which is a flavor fail if you ask me. That seems like a really simple thing they could have fixed.
Huge flavor
That is
fail.
annoying.
But it's a cool card. I'll probably make a video about it. But yeah, I think this is cool. I think it's in this nice spot that like if you want to make like a room deck, which is the new sub theme of enchantments in the new set, this is by far your best option if you want to go 5 colors with it. But it is open ended. But I think in the two most played enchantment types are like shrines which we already have a 5-color commander for, and then we also have sagas, which we already have a 5-color commander for. So this is a nice option if you want to just be a hipster and not play one of those commanders, but also if you just want to play like, I just like these enchantments, then cool. And then I liked your idea of like using the like Theros gods or whatever. So yeah, it's a cool option if you just want to play enchantments.
This is also a good card in the 99 of 5-color decks like that already run enchantments. If you run a Joda deck that's enchantments, you could throw this in there, and now you can play all the enchantments for that. If you already have like a Tom Bombadil deck, this will slot into a Tom Bombadil Sagas deck.
Yeah, I mean, just the enters ability seems good enough that you could maybe run this in just like already existing 5-color enchantment decks, because it enters, you look at the top 7, get all those enchantments. How many enchantments do you need to snag off of that for you to feel like you got enough value off of it?
The one thing that I'll say about this that makes it a little bit more fair is I do think that it's appropriate that it's reveal the top 7 and not look at the top 7. It does kind of give you a disadvantage because if you do have a lot of enchantments in there and you're going to be pulling all those out and you don't have any of those no maximum cards hand size effects, you're going to have to be discarding. So your opponents are likely going to know at least the enchantments that are in your hand and like, okay, they had this enchantment that they pulled, but then they discarded it here, so they have something that's better than that in their hand. And you are just giving your opponents more information that way, which I think is nice and
Well,
fair for this
they
card.
have to do that for ruling, because you have to prove that the cards that you're grabbing are enchantments.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying you could look at the top
Oh, I see
seven
what you mean. Yeah.
and then reveal the enchantments and then not tell your
And
opponents
throw away the other
what you're
cards.
yeah, exactly, what you're putting on the bottom.
But again, like how many enchantments do you think you have to hit off of that in order for you to justify putting it in your deck? Because I feel
Two.
like, really, you would pay 5 mana,
Two.
a 5 mana draw 2, if you think
Five
about it like
mana.
that.
It's not
It's
5 mana draw
but
2. It's 5 mana look at 7, pick 2,
Okay.
yeah.
or get.
And if you're running an enchantments deck, the likelihood that of those 7 cards, at least 2 of them are enchantments, I would say is pretty high. So if I get 1 off this, I'm disappointed because I did pay 5 mana for that. But if I get 2, if I get Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, I'm happy I paid 5 mana for that.
No, you're playing 5 color. The enchantment you want to hit is Omniscience, actually.
That's
Okay,
fair.
that would be awesome. Yeah. Jason, what do you got next?
Next up, I picked a room. So this is a new enchantment type, and it basically you could play either side, and playing that side unlocks that door, and then at a later time at sorcery speed, you can unlock the other door for that door's mana cost. So this is Dollmaker's Shop and Porcelain Gallery. So Dollmaker's Shop for 1 and a white. It says whenever one or more non-toy creatures you control attack a player, create a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. So at most, if you're playing a 4-player game, you can make at most 3 per turn. But then it's Porcelain Gallery for 4/2 white, and it says creatures you control have base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. Holy guacamole, fellas. This card is super saucy. First of all, it's going to be feeding your board with more creatures that are just going to make the creatures bigger. And then if you just want to play this as a late game spell for 6 mana just to get your creatures really huge and try and end the game, you can hold it in your hand and do that. This card is perfect because it has super good early game utility, mid game utility, and then perfect late game utility. I just think that this card is incredible. And it's an enchantment, so it's going to trigger a lot of those enchantment ETBs, and yeah, it's going to slot into a lot of enchantment decks that maybe also have at least a couple of creatures that they're trying to do damage with. Even if you have 3 creatures on the battlefield, having all your creatures base power and toughness 3/3, if you're making a bunch of 1/1s, that's
Yeah.
insane.
I think if you're
Uh,
just playing any kind of small creature, go wide kind of deck, this is probably pretty good, because it is templated for so that you could cast the smaller half, and then later you could pay the higher mana cost one. I'll unlock that room later in the game. which is obviously better if you're like in the early game, you're still deploying and you're still building your board, then obviously that's better to do. But if you get to the late game and you already have a decent board state and you already like have the mana, you can cast Porcelain Gallery first and not unlock the Dollmaker shop. You can do that and just then it's just like a pretty efficient overrun effect for white. So this seems pretty good. It seems pretty good.
Here's the thing with it too. If you play it as the Porcelain Gallery, and then you play it as the Dollmaker shop, well, and like if you play both on the same turn, if you're at that stage of the game where you're going to be swinging at each player, when you attack each player, your creatures are automatically going to get another 3/3 buff from the tokens that you make from attacking them. So as a 6 mana and like win the games type of spell, it's really, really good. But as an 8 mana win the game spell, it's even better. So that's what really like put me over the edge on this card was playing both of them at the same time is even really, really powerful and just as powerful, if not more powerful, than playing them individually and like unlocking the next door on a different turn.
And you know what we said last episode? Was it last episode that we talked about win cons? We said that 8 mana, you should win the game.
This is going in Felice for sure. And it's in white, so
Yeah,
you double tokens.
So this card is insane, and it might be the most powerful one we talk about. Because both of those halves of the card could each be an individual card that would still be really good. Those would both be absolutely playable on their
There's
own.
a couple rooms
It's
that are
kind
like
of
that.
busted to, yeah. But this might be the strongest one. Both of those are going to go insane in every single token deck that's ever been built. Getting both of those effect is just gross. I'm gonna play it, obviously, but yeah,
Oh
it is
yeah.
it is
Oh
gross.
yeah. Honestly, I think that this is a card that even though it's like $12, $13 right now for like just the base version, pick up a few of these because this is another one that I think is really going to climb in price.
I don't know. I still hold by the thought that it's also a mythic. I still hold by the thought that like we're recording this in pre-order time still. Cards tend to drop. So don't
You
has
should get it after the set releases,
That's what I
but
mean.
you
I'm not
shouldn't
saying
wait much longer
pre-order
than
it right
that.
now.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say about this one is that um even if you're not a token deck, I kind of still like it just as an efficient overrun. Like the fact that Porcelain Gallery can buff up your creatures so much. There are other white cards that do similar things, but that just seems like really efficient for something that you're going to be able to get to do every turn. You're not getting any keywords, right? Like there's other ones that give trample or flying or whatever. This is just boosting power and toughness, but it's 6 mana repeatable. All right. My next card is Enduring Curiosity. So, this is the blue card of that cycle we talked about earlier on. This is for 2 blue Cat Glimmer 4/3 with Flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and then whenever it dies, if it was a creature returned to the battlefield under its owner's control, it's an enchantment, not a creature. So this is sweet for a few reasons. So if you guys remember back to our Mana Rock tier list, there was a little card called, well, actually, we had 2 mono blue artifacts that we talked about that were mono blue Mana Rocks. And part of why I was high on both of them is because one of them had flash. So you're in blue, so you want to be leaving up your tricky cards, your counter magic, whatnot. And then if you don't need to use that, then you can play your Mana Rock or whatever. Or dump your mana into the Midnight Clock was the other one. So you having uses for that mana. So the fact that this has flash is huge because that means that if you want to leave up your counter magic, you can do that. And then comes back to your turn. I didn't need to counter anything. Boom, drop this sucker. So that's great. Also, I think so. There's a lot of these effects that say whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. There's a lot of blue cards that do that. The first one being Coastal Piracy. This is debatably the best one. there's a little bit of argument that there's one, I think it's called the Indomitable, that's a vehicle. So if you care about vehicles, that one's probably technically better. There's one from Ikoria that has cycling. So if you're a cycling deck, maybe that one's technically better. But otherwise, this is probably the best one of these effects, because otherwise you're playing a non-creature in a creature deck. This is a creature, so it's fulfilling its own role. And it's a 4/3 body, which is nothing to scoff at. It's probably going to get a little bit of damage in, or support itself. It's going to hold some weight in combat, at either on offense or defense a little bit before it dies. So I think just in a vacuum, this is the best one of these effects. And I like these effects. If I'm playing a blue creature deck, I'm playing these. So yeah. What do you guys think?
Well, it's even better because like you the flash like do that right before it's about to be your turn, but you can also attack. They don't declare blockers because they don't think it's that big of a deal. Like that, you just let some 1/1s in, and then boom, you just drew 4 or 5 cards. That's an even better use of the flash, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I'm not even thinking if you have like a creature attacking like each player, like if you're able to like have a board presence and you can swing a couple of different creatures at each player's gonna probably have to let some through depending on what their board state is. So you flash this in at a time like that. Now you're drawing 6, maybe 7 cards. And on that next turn, as long as everything stays intact on your board, you're probably in a better position to win the game at that point. This card is, yeah, I think that definitely the best of these effects. And it's tough for me to put it in like the enduring cycle, like where I would rate it, because like the green one is really good and the white one, like we talked about, is really, really good.
Yeah, this and the white one were my two favorite, but I kind of liked all of them. But I feel like this was the white and the blue one were the most open ended, like they could go in more decks. Whereas the other ones I felt like were more specific, if that makes sense. Like all decks are gonna have creatures. So, all right, Preston, lead us through your last card.
All right, to finish off, I have Winter Misanthropic Guide for a 1 black red green legendary creature human warlock 3/4 with ward 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. Then Delirium, as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types. I've gotten really into graveyard decks this past like half a year or so. This one seems pretty fun. It wants you to play a bunch of different card types for the Delirium, and then you're doing a group hug and a group slug thing. That just seems really fun to me. This is gonna be one I have to build at some point. It might not be like the next commander deck I build, but I'm building this at some point. No way I'm not.
Making an opponent's hand size 2 sounds really mean. But I think that this is such a fun, cool way to do it, you know? Because there is a lot of setup that goes into it, and it's something that is like in most situations, I think when this commander gets played, it's one of those kill on sight commanders because it's like either we kill it with what we have in our hands now, or we're just going to be top decking our 2 cards every turn and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and it has ward 2, which means it's even harder to reliably try to remove efficiently. So okay, so because you are relying on the Delirium, it does take a little bit more of a build around. But you know what this looks like to me? Jin Gataxias, the original one, the one that says players have no maximum hand size. That card is debatably more oppressive, but that one is mono blue and is a lot more mana. This is half the mana, and you're in the ramp color. So by removing it, the commander tax doesn't even matter, and it's easier to build back. So this does require a little bit more work, but it kind of just seems like more brutal Jin Gataxias. And I don't like that. I don't like. This is coming from the guy who loves Jund and the guy who loves Delirium and the guy who loves graveyard decks. I hate this card.
I'm
This
sorry.
card you
I'm
can
over here
interact
having
with way more. but the person who's playing it has more options to come back.
I think I'm
Because you're
over.
playing green, so you have mana, but you're also playing black, so you have graveyard recursion. So it's kind of like a trade-off.
I think I'm over here having a stroke. Did you just say that you think this is worse than Jin Gataxias? Because that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You can't run Jin Gataxias in this deck because it doesn't have blue, and Jin Gataxias doesn't draw
No,
you
no, no.
cards. At least you're gonna draw cards.
Yeah, but my point is, like, if you just kill Jin Cataxius once, you probably just lock them out of the game forever because of its mono blue and commander tax. This is half the mana and in the ramp color.
Okay,
Whereas
so
also, if you
here's the
get, how
thing.
many card types are there? Isn't this at a point where you can have no maximum hand size, or your hand size is 0? Because there's
Oh wait, there's
Planeswalker.
battles, I guess, battles.
So
So
there's
planeswalkers, lands, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, battles.
sorceries, enchant. So okay, I'm gonna go through the mana box listing because I can visualize
Card
it in my
types.
brain.
Oh yeah,
So
you can make. Okay,
Planeswalker,
so yeah,
Planeswalker creature, artifact, instant, sorcery, enchantment, land, battle, kindred. That's 9.
Kindred. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
So yeah,
Okay,
you can actually make people's hands
negative
-2.
2.
but you know
Does that mean we have to mill
what?
now?
But you know what? A reliquary tower takes care of that. A reliquary tower.
Timestamp.
A reliquary tower takes care of that.
I think it's time stamped. So I think I would have to double check this, but I think it would be like if this comes down and then you play Reliquary Tower, then your Reliquary Tower works. But otherwise, no. I would have to double check.
Yeah,
that.
whichever one came in.
Yeah. Which means if you do that and you're like, oh yeah, I'm fine, and then this dies and it comes back, then your Reliquary Tower doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
but
pretty
here's
sure
the
that's
other
how that
thing.
works.
Here's the other thing I was gonna say. Somebody plays this and then you destroy it. Doesn't everybody else at the table just go like, "Yeah, we got to kill that player"?
Yes.
Or
So
absolutely.
so I
Over
mean
Tokalbog.
that's just my thing. Like no, because even after that, it's like you don't even want to let them get back to a point where that could be the case again. So let's just kill them now. You really put a huge target on your back if you do that. Which is one of the reasons why playing against Jin Gataxias is so oppressive, because it's blue. So you can just counter all the stuff that people are trying to do to stop you from Jin Gataxiasing off. So I think that saying this is more oppressive than Jin Gataxias when this actually will draw you cards, oof, that was disagree with that hard.
And you're giving them 2 extra cards to deal with your stuff.
But it has Ward 2. And you're in the ramp colors.
Yeah, but you don't think your opponents are going to be playing lands? You don't think that they might also be playing ramp colors and one of the spells that they are going to be...
It's not going to matter when your hand size is -2, Jason.
When you're drawing 2 cards on your opponent's turn and then 1 card on your turn, it will matter.
All right. Well, I hate it. Jason, talk to us about your number 1 card.
All right. So my number 1 card is Valgavoth, Terror Eater. So it is 6 and 3 black for a legendary creature, Elder Demon. It's at 9/9 with flying and lifelink, so it's at 9/9 for 9. And it has Ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. And then it says if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. Dude, this card is so sweet. As a commander to play against, I'm very terrified. I would be like, all right, well, I'm never going to let you cast that for as long as I'm able to. But as someone who's very excited to play this in certain decks, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so cool. It is so cool. It is so powerful. It is so strong. And it's appropriate that it's 9 mana. I really like that it's 9 mana because it shouldn't be anything less for as powerful as it is. Even though you're in black, so there's ways where you just get this into your graveyard and then bring it back from your graveyard and you don't pay 9 mana for it.
Yeah, the classic Legacy Entomb into Reanimate. And it has lifelink, which means assuming it doesn't get removed, you'll gain the life back really fast that you used from the reanimate.
And the other thing is like I'm gonna put this in my Aara deck, which the flip side of Aara is bringing creatures back from my graveyard to the battlefield. Um, so yeah, yep, happy about this. Um, and here's the thing: even if Valgavoth leaves the battlefield and comes back, you'll still get to play the cards that are exiled there because wait, it doesn't check that, does it? Because it just says you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. Those cards are still exiled from Valgavoth.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
pretty cool.
even if this goes away and then comes back, you'll still have access to all that beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Even if you don't have him out, you can still play him. He doesn't have to be out.
Yeah.
No, no, because it doesn't say as long as they remain exiled. If it said as long as they remain exiled, you would be right. But because the ability is on him specifically, then he has to be out for you to play them.
Hmm. Well, I don't even know if it's busted. I just think it's freaking dope. It's just cool. Like I miss when this is the cards that we used to be scared of. Like now it's the 2-mana Dockside that we're like, "Oh no." But there was a time where if they printed this, we'd all be like, "That's terrifying." But now we're just like, "Nice." Because like this is a 9-mana card that doesn't win the game. It just looks cool. I mean, I think Preston was going on about how this is some of the best art. I agree. Like this set in general has some really cool art. This is a great example of that. And also 9-mana 9/9 flying lifelink ward sack 3 non-lane permanents. You get to play your opponent's spells. Oh, that's the other thing. There are decks that care about playing cards that aren't your cards. So this could go in the 99 of a lot of those decks. Most of those decks have black in them. So good in the 99 there. It's not broken. It's really not. It's scary and it's gonna put in some work, assuming it gets to stick around. But it's not broken. It's just badass.
Not broken.
And
It's strong though.
here's the thing about it too that makes it really, really, really good. It's graveyard hate for everyone except you. It's graveyard hate for everyone who isn't you. So you can put this into decks that care about putting cards into your graveyard, and it will still be really, really good because it's only exiling your opponent's stuff. Or
See,
it
Morgan
could.
Winter's not that bad. He's just gonna exile my cards if they go to the graveyard. It's fine.
Can't be that bad. Yeah, I'm a fan. It's cool. I have at least one deck I would like to try sliding it in. We'll see. All right. Last card of the day. This is my last card. This is Hedge Shredder. This is for 2 green, 5/5 vehicle. So it's an artifact that is a creature when crewed. It has a crew cost of 1, meaning you can tap any number of creatures with total power 1 or more to turn it into a creature till end of turn. When it attacks, you mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. So admittedly, part of why I'm high on this card is just I like vehicles. I think they're a fun play pattern. And I have a vehicle deck right now, and I'm considering switching it to be a Gruul vehicles deck because green actually has a couple really cool vehicles. It might just be kind of cool. I think if you read this, it's easy to fall into a trap that you think you're just trying to mill 2 cards and casually get some lands that way. That's the wrong way to do this. You play this in decks that are aggressively self-milling, and you will get absurd amounts of lands. If you're playing Sidisi, right? Or you're playing, you have Mesmeric Orb in your deck, or anything like that. Like, if you're like, oh, I'm going to mill 20 cards here. Oops, like 12 of those were lands. Here we go. That's insane. Good with Dredge, anything like that. Anything that's aggressively aggressively self-milling. You don't have to attack with this in order to get that effect. So I think in those style of decks, you could probably just play this fairly in land heavy decks. Like if you just have a lot of lands in your deck, and so the mill 2, you're likely to get 1 or 2 lands. That seems fine. If you're a vehicle deck or an artifact deck, seems okay. But specifically, if you're a self mill deck, holy crap, this is going to ramp you so much.
This might end up being the best card in my strong deck.
Oh my
I'm
god.
so excited to play with this.
Yeah, that'll be
This
absurd.
could be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in certain decks, this card is definitely a powerhouse. I guess I'm just not as high on it as you guys. I think the fact that if if you're in a situation where you don't have any creatures, which it's not going to happen a ton if you build the deck right. Um, but just because the fact that there is the chance that this just sits on the board and does nothing except exist, um, you know, I'm not as high on it. In certain decks where you're self-milling, this is amazing. But overall, a little bit underwhelming to me. Now, if a land goes to your graveyard from anywhere, now we're talking. Now
Okay,
you got
well,
a
yeah,
card.
then it would be kind of insane. Well, okay, they couldn't word it like that because then you could just indefinitely loop your fetch lands. That's why they couldn't do that. Like they would come into, even if they came back into the battlefield tapped and you had to wait another turn to crack them, you could still just kind of indefinitely loop your fetch lands, and that would be a problem. Um, so,
I
so I
guess
think this
that's
is like a
true.
cap on it. I like
It's
it.
a free strip mine every turn.
Yeah, stuff like
Oh,
that. So.
that's actually the reason. That's actually the reason right there.
But I like this design. It's in the decks that want it. It's absurd. Like even in my Muldrotha deck, I've had turns where Mesmeric Orb, I untap like 20 things, I mill 20 cards. This would probably get
Or
me.
you Hermit Druid.
Yeah. So there are, like, in those style of decks, this is going to be probably your best ramp spell in your deck. But then if you're not playing that kind of deck, then it's probably just like, you're probably not going to play it. But like if you did play it, it'd probably be fine, but just underwhelming.
I want to
like
say
this style.
we haven't pointed this out, but you do get to turn a 1/1 into a 5/5 for combat.
Yeah.
That's not.
That's
nothing.
another point. That's another good point.
That's a pretty big deal.
That's
Also,
another good point.
Crewing is a way to tap down your creatures without having to put them in a combat. So there's in the new set there's a mechanic called Survival, and it says that like at the beginning of your second main phase, if the creature's tapped, you do a thing. This is a way to turn that on. Like vehicles are just a way to do that. There's also ways that like bounce all untapped creatures. There's the new board wipe that says destroy. You choose one, destroy all tapped or untapped creatures. And you can crew at instant speed. So if someone else casts that, you could be like, okay, I'm going to tap all my creatures in response. So vehicles are just kind of tricky, and I like it.
All right, you guys might have just talked me into this card because I do like cards that you can get tricky with, and looking at it over, I'm like, man, it is just getting any land card. One thing I think like you could do with this, and it wouldn't be that much stronger, is if when it entered or attacked.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, abusing the flicker for the mill, like, I don't know that many decks are going to have green that are going to want to do that. And if you are trying to do that, like,
well,
I
so
don't
it's
know.
on
This is
on attack that you get to mill too.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if it also, yeah. I don't think that would.
That attack trigger is there as a consolation. That's not why you're playing it. It's the second thing.
I think even if it didn't have that
you're playing
it
in a deck that's taken advantage of that without that.
Yeah, I think even if it didn't have that attack trigger, I think it would still be like really busted.
All I'm saying is I would like it more if it did that. And just, I think that it's better than what I was giving it credit for. But still, I just want a little bit more from this card for me to really love this card.
That's fair. Well, next, if you ever end up building a self-mill deck, make sure this gets in there, Jason. All right? Make sure
and I will tell you how much I love it.
All right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for our top 10, plus a couple extra cards from Duskmourn from the main set. Again, tune in next week if you want to hear us reacting to all of the new commander cards from all of the precons, all of the new cards from that. That will be next week. We will see you guys later. And let us know in the comments, would you guys care to see a Magic Online series? Because it's definitely something that we could probably figure out and make happen. It would be a way for us to keep doing set-specific episodes because the editing and turnaround and recording time and budgetary costs would be a lot lower. So let us know if that's something you guys would care to see. But we will be back next week to talk more about Duskmourn. And let us know what your favorite cards are as well. Have a good week. See you later. Bye.